Well, to His Excellency, the Governor, Kim Beazley, and it's a delight to see him rise to that position of such significance and prestige. To the Premier, Mark McGowan, who's left to go to the caucus meeting, which is very important, that secures his future much more so than staying and listening to my speech. To my former parliamentary colleague, David Johnston, the former Minister for Defence, to the Chief of the Navy, Mike Noonan. I'm sure I've missed a number of colleagues because I can't see you all very well from here, but if I have, I apologise. They're the ones that I managed to see. It is great to be here back in Perth for this inaugural Western Australian Indo-Pacific Defence Conference. And I do thank Premier Mark McGowan, who's an old friend of mine, for his comments, and Western Australia and the Commonwealth will continue to work closely together to seize the opportunities for local businesses, its skilled workforce, as he pointed out, and the wider community. For this state, the Indian Ocean go hand in hand. The Indian Ocean has replaced the Atlantic as the globe's busiest and most strategically significant trade corridor. It carries 2/3 of global oil shipments and 1/3 of the world's bulk cargo, thanks in part to Western Australia's remarkable resources, its gas, its mineral exports, following the massive investments in the last few decades. Let there be no doubt that the future trajectory of our world order will be increasingly shaped by the countries that comprise the Indo-Pacific. That trajectory will bring new opportunities and it'll bring new challenges. When I took over the defence portfolio, I outlined 4 top priorities: managing great power competition in the Indo-Pacific, pursuing enhanced military capability as we have been in the last few years and the next 10 years, pursuing military-to-military relationships with Japan, Indonesia, building them more with India and the Southwest Pacific, and managing the return of terrorist foreign fighters to Southeast Asia. How the relationships between the US, China, India, Russia and Japan, the Koreas, Indonesia and others alternate between cooperation and competition will shape not just our region, but the kind of world we live in for generations to come. There's a theory that the centre of strategic power and influence always shifts west, and I imagine that theory would be very popular here in Western Australia. And so it goes that Asia was once the most powerful region in the world, but slowly that centre of power shifted to Europe, and then west again, as we've seen in the last couple of 100 years, across the Atlantic to the United States. But many would say that shift of power is moving once again to Asia and the Indo-Pacific. What is beyond question is the return of first economic power and now strategic power to Asia. This profoundly changing strategic landscape triggered our adoption some years ago of the concept of the Indo-Pacific, a concept which has since also been adopted by a number of other countries, a concept centred on the vast and growing maritime highways from the Middle East through Southeast Asia to North Asia and across to North America. Another of my core priorities is to improve ties with one of those countries, in New Delhi, as I believe that our defence relationship with India has been significantly underdone. There are many opportunities to explore, from closer defence industry, increased cooperation on science and technology, as well as our work together on the quadrilateral, a grouping of the 4 like-minded countries that also includes the US and Japan. With large Indian Ocean coastlines, Australia and India are natural partners in maritime security. And so in 2017, the Australian Government committed to the greatest regeneration of Australia's maritime capability since the Second World War. It's critical to our ongoing influence in the Indo-Pacific region. The $90 billion naval shipbuilding enterprise is the most ambitious and largest capital investment ever undertaken in Australia. Its commitment will make us producers of, rather than just consumers of, innovative, strong military capability. It's an impressive list of projects. The 21 Pacific Patrol boats being built here in Western Australia at Henderson, the 12 offshore patrol vessels, 2 of which are being built in Osborne and 10 here at Henderson, the 12 future submarines and the 9 Hunter-class anti-submarine warfare frigates. Every single one of these vessels will be built in Australia, using Australian workers and Australian steel. The world-leading infrastructure to enable these programs is being built as we speak, whether it's CivMec's massive new assembly hall, which will be bigger than the Wacker and costing over $80 million, or the development of Osborne in my home state. And at the same time, we'll be maintaining and sustaining the Anzac frigates, which is done here in Henderson, and the Collins-class submarines, which is done at Osborne. This investment is about more than building ships, submarines and shipyards. It's about establishing our sovereign capability as a nation. It'll act as a catalyst for industry growth and create jobs for decades to come. The government is committed to maintaining a regionally superior Navy, and this is underpinned by strong strategic partnerships with Australia's defence industry and investment in our people to deliver a more capable, agile and potent future defence force. But this isn't just an Australian government issue. The states and territories all have an important role to play, and so I welcome the release today of Western Australia's Defence Strategic Plan. It demonstrates that Western Australia is positioning itself to take advantage of the opportunities that I've outlined. As most of you probably know, I'm a passionate advocate of building our local industry to deliver the capability our military needs. And I note that the strategic plan highlights defence exports and the important role of skilling in science, technology, engineering and maths. This will position Western Australia well to be a key location of Australia's defence industry for years to come. I'm pleased to welcome the announcement by Premier McGowan today to establish the Defence Science Centre here in Western Australia. A coherent national approach is imperative. Instead of competing fiercely for work, we're bringing together complementary capabilities from around the country to offer complete solutions, which in turn builds a resilient, competitive industry which seizes global export opportunities. The naval shipbuilding enterprise provides a wealth of opportunities for WA with its proud maritime history and its naval expertise. Highlighting the state's critical role in the enterprise and testament to the strong relationship between our two governments, the Commonwealth is funding both projects and upgrades to defence facilities and infrastructure. The Australian Government's infrastructure commitments to Western Australia are very significant. $367 million to the development of the naval base at HMAS Stirling to modernise essential infrastructure such as the wharves, the power, water and the security systems. These works began in November 2017, and local businesses are playing a significant role in delivering these upgrades. $300 million has been committed to supporting the training and the capability centre of the offshore patrol vessels, $200 million to support the Navy's new replenishment vessels, which includes extensions of existing wharves and support facilities at HMAS Stirling. $670 million at HMAS Stirling and Henderson will turn Western Australia into the home of Hunter-class training, further cementing Western Australia as a key location for our Navy. There will be a sustainment hub at Henderson with headquarters and through-life support functions for the Hunter class. The new Navy Training System Centre West will be located at HMAS Stirling and will be the training centre for all naval personnel assigned to the Hunter class. There will also be extensions to the existing wharves, the constructions of maintenance and storage buildings and new support facilities, including accommodation and medical facilities. We have a $100 million investment from February 2017 in naval-related shipbuilding and sustainment infrastructure. This initial $100 million investment is focused on establishing the sustainment hub at Henderson and will include facilities for the headquarters of Navy personnel of each ship class, the systems program officers for both the offshore patrol vessels and the Hunter-class frigates, as well as a linked through-life support facility. These commitments add up to a combined $1.5 billion investment in naval shipbuilding here in Western Australia. It's money that's going directly to the state, helping create jobs and deliver our Defence Force the capability that it needs. It reflects Western Australia's importance in defence and naval shipbuilding industries and means more ships can be built and sustained here. So I also welcome the work that we've been doing with Western Australia on the Henderson Development Master Plan. Work on this has already started and will continue over the next 12 months in partnership with the Commonwealth. It's very important this plan gets the balance right between Defence's needs but also the thriving commercial defence industry, commercial industry at Henderson. And let's not forget, we're also investing in other critical defence infrastructure in Western Australia. $68 million at the RAF base Pearce to provide upgraded facilities and infrastructure to support the new Poseidon aircraft. Runways will be extended and taxiways will be strengthened for our new maritime patrol aircraft. Over $40 million will be invested at the RAF bases Gingen and Pearce to deliver new air traffic control towers and systems. And late last year, of course, we announced that the German shipbuilder Lürssen had won the tender to build the 12 offshore patrol vessels. And I see Peter Lürssen is here, and I welcome him to the conference. And Linda Reynolds, who I now see is also here. I might have missed you earlier, Linda. It's nice to have you here. A great advocate for Western Australia defence industry. These offshore patrol vessels will have an important role protecting our borders and will provide greater range and endurance than the existing patrol boat fleet. That's a project that's worth $3.6 billion and will create 1,000 direct and indirect jobs. 10 of the 12 offshore patrol vessels will be built here at Henderson as the Australian Maritime Shipbuilding and Export Group, AMSEG, which is the joint venture between Lürssen and CIVMEC, which I talked about before. Australian steel is being used for all the 12 offshore patrol vessels after being prepared and processed in WA. Scott Morrison was at CIVMEC just this month when we commenced cutting steel on schedule. And construction of the first OPV starts in a matter of weeks in South Australia, and I'll be there. The project will move to Western Australia in 2020, and CIVMEC's $85 million facility, where 10 OPVs will be built, will ensure the state has the ongoing capacity and capability to build naval vessels for export as well. One of Australia's most successful military capability programs in the Indo-Pacific region is the Pacific Patrol Boat Program. This program has been successful in providing Pacific Island nations with a means of patrolling their own exclusive economic zones, providing an effective means of countering illegal fishing, improving regional security cooperation, and contributing to South Pacific nation building in general. The existing fleet is approaching its end of service life and will be replaced with a fleet of new Austal-built Guardian-class vessels. Austal says this program will support 200 direct jobs at Austal and a further 200 indirect jobs in the broader Australian industry. There are currently 5 of those vessels in various stages of production here in WA, and production of the 6th is due to start in December. Delivery of the first vessel, the Ted Dero, to Papua New Guinea is scheduled for late November, December, and I look forward to visiting PNG to see that boat in action. Looking further ahead, the government is replacing the existing hydrographic capability and is looking to construct a military oceanographic survey vessel. So I'm delighted to say that it's the government's intention that this vessel will be built here in WA. Defence estimates that the new project will see an investment of around $200 million into the Western Australian shipbuilding industry, with an additional $50 million expected to be spent around the rest of the country. The selection of the design is subject to ongoing assessment ahead of a government decision expected next financial year. It's an exciting development for Western Australia and for Australia, which means more jobs for the state. Western Australia will also continue to conduct critical maintenance and sustainment work for a number of naval vessels. And let's not underestimate the importance of sustainment to local businesses and supply chain small and medium enterprises. It's high value, critical and long-term work. Earlier this year, I announced the extension of the contract for the sustainment and capability upgrade of the Navy's workhorse, the Anzac-class frigate. The majority of that sustainment work, which is valued at more than $1.2 billion, will be done here at Henderson, with additional work at HMAS Stirling, with obviously flow-on benefits to the small and medium enterprises that are engaged in that project. The Collins-class submarines will continue to conduct intermediate dockings and mid-cycle dockings at the ASC facility at Henderson. In addition to the planned maintenance, capability upgrades can now occur, and Western Australia has personnel with the skills to do this incredibly important work. Our naval shipbuilding enterprise relies on a strong and vibrant SME community, represented by groups like the Henderson Alliance and Aden WA. So I'm pleased to see many more Western Australian businesses taking advantage of the government's massive defence investment and accessing services provided by the Centre for Defence Industry Capability, which we created about 2 years ago, and it's been operating for 2 years. As I outlined when I launched the government's defence export strategy earlier this year, exports are a key element of our vision for building a stronger, more sustainable and globally competitive Australian defence industry in support of our capability needs. I was very pleased to be able to appoint the former Defence Minister and my former colleague, David Johnston, as the first defence export advocate. He's doing a great job working hand in glove with me on trying to open up export markets. And I was pleased in July that the government of Trinidad and Tobago announced plans to build 2 Austral Cape-class patrol boats used by our Navy and our Border Force with a value of over $100 million. This has recently been expanded to include 2 high-speed ferries. So congratulations to Austral, and I see David Singleton is here, so to be even-handed with Peter Lurson, I should also welcome David Singleton to this conference. Western Australia is our face to the Indian Ocean. Its proximity, its industry, its capability, and above all, its people. So again, I'd like to thank Premier McGowan and his Minister, Paul Papalia, and I pass my condolences to Paul Papalia, who unfortunately is not here at this conference because of a death in the family, but I thank them for their continuing partnership, and I look forward to their ongoing commitment to expanding Western Australia's defence industry. And I'd like to pay tribute to the men and women in uniform, but I also want to thank the hard-working people that form the workforce behind the Defence Force. The industry is becoming more resilient, more robust, because we're working together. It is truly a great national endeavour. I'm certainly committed to delivering the capability needed by our military, protecting our inspiring service personnel, and is doing much work as possible here locally. Western Australia is central to achieving our ambitious goals, and I wish you well for the rest of your conference today. Thank you.